Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to the Future Now Hybrid Bootcamp 2021. After yesterday's pitching session, we continue today with Startup Clinic, which is a workshop format dedicated to share the experience from expert mentors in the fields such as legal, investments, customer discovery or strategy, in order to give you insights how to improve your product, service, or startup at all. Our Tuesday workshop is called Play the Game and Win, and we will be discussing the topic of securing smart investments. Just a short reminder, you can find all the details about the agenda, program, speakers, and even the chat room to discuss with the participants on our platform at futurenow2020.org. If you have any further questions about the program, our chatbot Laia will be at your disposal. And now is the time to kick off today's session, where we look closer to the legal challenges your startup may face in the investment process. Let's talk about the anatomy of investment rounds, maybe some boring but important stuff, such as technicalities, such as due diligence or term sheets, and also we will get a closer look at investors' landscape. Let me introduce you our guest speaker, who is a legal and growth wizard. And his understanding of the ecosystem's legal pains has been developed by helping more than 60 CEE startups on their journey to global success. And his growth acumen has further been sharpened by serving as a board member of Vacuum Labs, one of the fastest growing tech companies in the CEE, and by co-founding a number of legal tech products. Please, round of applause for strategic mind behind Sparring, Majo Porvažník.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me well? Lovely. Thank you very much. So, welcome to today's workshop. Not really the presentation about how to win the game of investments. So, first of all, searching for the presentation. Lovely. This is not ideal, but well, it is what it is. So, first of all, let me tell you something about Sparring, because this is the company where actually I gained most of my know-how from. So the Sparring is a legal and strategic support that helps startups from the CE in their road or growth to the global success. It comprises of 30 plus lawyers and strategic minds that support you in your journey to growth. Sparring itself founded a couple of legal tech products, so not only the people are the Sparring partners are involved in the law and strategic advice, but also they're entrepreneurs themselves. Therefore, they do have a hands-on experiences. Since I have been introduced, let's really kick this off. So, well, as I've mentioned, this is not supposed to be a presentation. This is supposed to be a workshop. We will have approximately 10 to 15 minutes in the very end of the presentation or the workshop for your Q&As, but please feel free to interrupt me at any time with your questions, comments, personal experiences, inquiries. It's ideal to actually discuss the topics and dig deeper when discussing the particular topic rather than really returning afterwards. So please feel free to raise your hand. Either you are in this room or you are remotely connected. I would be more than happy to really discuss this. So please, this is workshop. Its quality would be as good as your insights and comments will be. So please feel free to really chip in and make this a useful 90 minutes. Cool. First of all, I would like to start with a brief poll. So how many of your startups actually went through at least seed investment round, so that we will know what's the maturity in the room? Anybody? Okay, one. Perfect. In such a case, good. then I will pay more attention to the very first part that is, I would say, more descriptive and explanatory, but again, feel free to ask any of your questions. So we'll go through anatomy of investment rounds. This is, I would say, we'll go through the when you receive the very first thought about raising some money to actually finding them on your bank account, and we will go through all the process. What does it mean? What does it take? When does it happen? Then we'll go through the boring technicalities, where we'll deep dive what does it really due diligence mean, what the investors will be looking for, what are the potential pitfalls there. Then we'll go through term sheet, since this is I would say, the very cornerstone of the investment success. And lastly, we will discuss investors themselves, hopefully holistically. Cool, so let's get to it. So let's start with the anatomy of investment. So in the very, very beginning, there are a couple of issues you should think about. And it's first is the very preparation for the investment. Now, in that, you need to prepare a couple of strategic documentation. First, it's a business case. Now, the business case, of course, honestly, investors do not really care about it. However, business case is a proof that you can think in a reasonable way. All of us know that the startups amount to the iterative process. They'll change their business case a number of times. They can switch from the B2C to the B2B market, and nobody was prepared for that. And that's not really the case. What's this business case about is a proof of concept, is a proof for the investors that you can think soundly and you can speak sense. So it's very important to have it in a reasonable manner, not to be overly optimistic, but to be realistic, so that, and however bold enough, so that the investors would know that, okay, this is a good chemistry and cultural fit for my investment thesis. Also, what's really important is a data room. Now, the data room is a basically Google Doc or Google folder where you've got all your important documents in one place. Now, because after the signing of the term sheet, a due diligence would take place, and those documentation will be reviewed. Now, very often we come across the startups that actually do not have these data rooms ready. They do not actually have the contracts in place. They do lack a documentation. Now, trying to backdate that and prepare it within the short period of time while you are really searching for, or desperately searching for money very often, it's not an easy task. And it's very easily avoidable if you would be able to actually prepare the documentation and the data room as you go. So basically to have all the stuff ready, signed agreements, etc. Especially when it comes to your IP. I mean, too often, and I will speak about IP a bit later on, but too often we come across the companies that actually are building digital products. However, they do not legally own IP towards them. Now, if they come back to their developers from 2 years ago and try to achieve and get the IP, it gets difficult or expensive. So it's very important to think about the DD years before you, or at least months before you really start the fundraising process itself. Lastly, it's a pitch deck. It's the document that really represents the mindset and actually business case of your company. Yesterday you had your pitching session, and the pitch decks would be a fundamental part of it. It's really important to fine-tune it, to go through the pitch deck with a couple of investors, mentors, your peers, so that it's really well drafted, well written, and it covers all important topics such as team, potential of the market, business model, USP, competitive landscape, etc., etc. So this is important not to miss anything. Otherwise, the box would not be ticked, and there would be questions about that. Cool. Also, it's important to know that investment process itself, it takes months. I mean, very often we come across the startups that say, oh, that should be easy. Well, it is not. From receiving a term sheet from an investor, which is pretty much a win already, it takes approximately 3 months until you find the money on your bank account. From receiving the term sheet, you decide to choose. To receive a term sheet, it takes another 3 months of pitching, of selecting investors, of basically providing with the business data, financial statements, etc. So I would say 6 months is the average and a bit optimistic, I would say, process for the raising of VC funding. Now, if you would like to be conservative, you should count 9 months at least. So therefore, please think in advance, think about your runway, because if you would decide to raise too lately, then you may be able to be successful, of course, but your negotiation position would be very hard. And too often we've seen startups to accept unfavorable conditions because there was no time to negotiate, and they needed the funds to either prolong some license or hire developers or whatever. So do not put yourself into the weak position and start the fundraising at least, ideally, I would say 9 months in advance. Cool. And also, let's look for the right investors, but this is, I would say, the content of the third part of the presentation, so I'll skip this one for now. Now there's a communication. What's really important when it comes to the investors is that you need to really reach out to them. Now, use successful funds. They receive hundreds, potentially thousands of pitch decks every quarter, right? And it's really hard to really be remembered. Therefore, it's really important for you to get a warm introduction to the partner of the fund or the managing associate of the particular fund. Events such as Future Now are amazing for that, because basically you can meet investors in person, you can discuss with them, create personal connection, but also you can connect and reach out to them via your advisors, for instance. But anyway, warm introductions really count. If you rely on the cold emails, the success rate would significantly drop down. Even if you are a good startup, even if your business case is sound, basically there won't be enough time for the people to really go through your business case. Therefore, search for warm introductions, utilize Future Now for this. This would be really helpful. This is the door to investors. Also, what's really important is that you never know when you would have an opportunity to really pitch your idea. Sometimes you will have a forum, such as at the Startup Awards, where you would have 7 minutes or whatever to really explain your idea. But sometimes you've got really like 30 seconds in between 2 beers. And it's very important for you to be ready for any occasion, so that even in the midnight, you would be able to really memorize the position and the pitch that is appropriate for the given situation. Sometimes you simply don't have 30 minutes, but sometimes you would be asked to present for an hour or 2 in front of the whole board of the management or investment committee of the VC fund. Therefore, you have to be really ready for different scenarios, and you have to be very, very solid when it comes to the presenting of your idea, because if you are not persuasive, then who is? Of course, discussions, time is of essence. It's important, especially when it comes to the US VCs. You should respond within 24 hours. Also, including weekends. So basically you have to show the determination, you have to show the hunger, and you have to hustle your way through. With the European VCs, it's more relaxed, and we will talk about differences a bit later again, but it's very important for you to really push things a lot. What's really important for you is to know that fundraising takes a lot of time. It seems like it's just sending the presentation, it takes a lot of time. And usually CEOs do this, usually. So you have to be aware that if this process is to take you 9 months, and basically your CEO is to push this, you would basically lose maybe 50% of the time of your CEO for this. So your business, your core team must count with this, that basically the CEO would not be available as he or she was before. And this is an important thing to bear in mind. And lastly is the term sheet from this slide. That basically term sheet is and we will discuss it again a bit more, but term sheet is I would say, a gentleman's not binding agreement that basically sums up all the important business elements and part of your deal, such as valuation, cap tables, and basic milestones. For instance, if you are receiving the transaction, the investment in tranches, for instance. But we'll cover term sheet later on. So this is something you would actually receive, I would say, ideally after 3 months from really starting to approach the VCs. Usually the term sheets can vary from 2 pages to maybe 15 was the worst. The more corporate VC, the longer the term sheet usually. However, even if it's sent to you, you have quite wide room to negotiate. Okay, so do not be afraid. What do you see? I mean, of course, what do you see says something about the mindset of the investor. So be cautious and absorb the information. However, there is a lot of space for improvement. Some of the VCs already state that, okay, look, this is just the default position and let's discuss. Some of them try to be more strict, but either way, usually there is a lot of space for negotiation of basically any term. So do not be afraid of it and be really mindful of in the end of the day, success of your own business, because this is what matters. Also, investors want to see you actually taking and optimizing for the success of your business. So now, before you receive a term sheet, because there is due diligence. Now, due diligence has 3 major parts. Before you receive the term sheet from the investor, you would undergo a business due diligence, meaning that they would basically research either with you or on their own the potential of the market, the competitive landscape, basically what position you are, would go through your business case so that they can determine your valuation, etc., etc. So basically this business due diligence would go in advance. However, once you receive the term sheet, you negotiate and you sign it, then between term sheet signing and the investment documentation closing, there are approximately 3 months. And part of the process is that basically financial and legal due diligence is taking place, where basically your statutory financial documents, such as tax returns, would be, or accounting documentation, would be reviewed, whether there is some skeleton in the closet or not. And of course, a legal due diligence in multiple levels would also take place. Sometimes at the very early stage startups, this might not be that prudent and that diligent. And basically the VC would say, okay, I'm only care about IP. If the IP is secured, I'm okay with that. But the larger the round is, the more prudent the due diligence usually is. And for that, it's very important for you to have data room ready, because if it's not ready, not only it would cost you more, but also it may take additionally couple of weeks to really supply the fresh documentation to the data room that would basically state what this is. The valuation of the startup is determined in the term sheet that you already signed. It cannot go up. There are some exceptions, but it basically cannot go up. However, it can go down, depending on the red flags the investor found through the DD, to the due diligence. So either it's a showstopper, for instance, you don't have the IP, or you are not in compliance with some regulation, such as fintech startups or crypto startups or legal tech startups or healthcare startups may be in breach. Or they would say, okay, this is a minor breach, you have not cured it, therefore this should decrease the valuation of your startup. So basically the due diligence can also, the outcome can be really basically the seizing of the transaction and freezing it, or actually diminishing your own valuation. So be mindful of that.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So how legal is e-signatures? I mean, like using the providers such as like EverSign, DocuSign, and so on. You know, like when we are securing, like, let's say IP, right? If we send like this e-signature form to our developer, how it would be legal, or we need like the original, or if e-signature is fine?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much. Depends on the country of origin of the particular developer, because the national copyright law is applicable. Usually, if the document is written and if it's signed via PandaDoc, DocuSign, whatever, it should be okay under most of the jurisdictions. Some of the jurisdictions are more strict. Usually, the more east you go, the more strict the jurisdiction is, and for that, it's ideal to basically have a pen and paper document signed by hand and then scanned to the data room. Now, usually the VCs are okay with the PandaDoc signed versions of the documents, but as I've said, there might be some exceptions. So if there is one document you would like to have it, you would like to sacrifice the forests for, it's the IP transfer documents. Most of the others should be fully digital.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Cool. Once you go through the due diligence, now you have a tough decision to make. What would be the way of your investment? Basically, either you go through equity round, so basically the VC would become a shareholder of your company, or you would go through convertible note, which is basically a loan that may convert the VC investor to your cap table in, I don't know, 12 or 24 months. Okay. Now, we will discuss it a bit more, but for now, I would say that usually in the Central Eastern Europe, there is not much of a difference, whatever round you choose. I would say, yeah, of course, technically on backend, legal backend, the situation is different, but on the front end, it's pretty much the same. Also time-wise, also cost-wise. In the US, it is not. In the US, to go through a convertible note, such as SAFE documentation, that is a market standard, is by far the fastest and cheapest way. I mean, basically within days, documentation can be signed, because basically there is a standard template already given. You cannot really make changes. Therefore, the signing of the SAFE documentation is very, very easy and simple. However, the equity round in the US is more robust, more expensive, and more lengthy. In the CE, there is not much of a difference in this way. So basically, you will not get anything out of it. However, I would say the only difference in the CE is that if you really trust to your startup and you trust your valuation, by way of the convertible note, you can be able to achieve a higher valuation. Okay? Because what you do in a convertible note, you say, okay, so this is the money. However, the percentage in exchange for the money is not determined. It will be determined in the future based on the performance of your startup. Now, if your startup performs well, then you can get a better valuation than you have today. So basically, but of course, or worse, right? So it's always a bet. But if you are very confident and you think that the VC is great, but they do underestimate your startup, then you can opt for this open game of convertible note. Also, I would say, and I would add to that betting on the highest valuation on the market is not the soundest strategy, because actually high initial valuations can suffocate your business and lead you to the down round down the road. So depending on your appetite and risk appetite, choose your own strategy, but we always advise startups to be either, well, to play it, I would say, in the middle ground. So not to leave a lot of equity in the initial stages to the investors because the valuation is too small, but nor to really hunt them down for the largest possible, because then they can be in the issues and problems of down round in 18 or 24 months, which would be pity. Cool. So once the documentation is negotiated and closed, and this is an important point, that in the term sheet you agree on most of the business terms. However, there is a bunch of legal stuff that has to be negotiated in the investment documentation that is usually 20, 30, 40 pages long. Therefore, it takes that long to really negotiate it. There are many warranties, representations, and legalities that also have some material impact to your startup or may have in the future. Therefore, it's really important to pay attention also to that. Now, while for term sheet, you don't need legal representation, and basically it's okay. When it comes to the investment documentation, it's advisable if you have no lawyers in your core team to basically be advised and basically fight for for your position, or at least make sure that you understand all the provisions you have. Sometimes in the CE there is one lawyer supporting and being a neutral and trying to support both the VC and the startup. It may work, but be really careful there that you really understand all the provisions at hand. Otherwise, it can pay back to you in the months and years to come.
I have another question.
Of course.
Sorry. What's the most like negative provisions that we have to watch out?
That's a good question.
Like the worst one, actually.
Worst one. Well, first one. Very often the founders are afraid of personal liability. So, for instance, in the documentation, you do a lot of warranties. You warrant that there is no debt, that there are no disputes, and that you own the all IP, and you are not aware of any other harmful stuff. If you warrant that, and your warrant or representation proves to be false, then very often the VCs actually try to hold founders liable for that. For the failed representation by their, and then you basically guarantee and you put the skin in the game and your own property, house, mortgage, whatever. Also, in the shareholders agreement, for instance, there are many provisions in relation to the drag along, tag along, that actually the shareholders agreement prescribes you the exact behavior in certain situations, and if you do not comply with them, then again certain severe measures can take place. Now this is really important. Also, I would say there might be some non-compete clauses, for instance, included, or I would say excessive non-disclosure agreements. So there are many things that you should be aware of. Also, sometimes in the term sheet, it's only very vaguely stated, but in the investment documentation, it's really clear that certain decisions must be approved by the given investor, and if the scope of the decisions is too broad, then actually a VC can micromanage the startup and actually really, I would say, restrain the autonomy of the founding team. So all these issues are very sensitive, and you should really take a good care and due diligence to really make them right and negotiate them fairly, I would say. I mean, of course, VC needs also certain assurances, because there are many rogue entrepreneurs that do not play it plainly and fairly. So it's okay for the VC to really ask for certain guarantees, but they need to be balanced. And this balancing is actually really the game that is being played when drafting the investment documentation.
Thanks.
Welcome. Then there is a closing, basically the signing the papers. Those are real papers, and then within couple of days or weeks, you can receive your money either in one tranche or in a couple of tranches. So it really depends upon your negotiation skills. And then there is this payment. So I would say this is the anatomy, how the transaction goes from the very idea of raising the funds to basically seeing your funds on your or the investors' funds on your bank account. Basically, as I've said, it takes 9 to 6 months. Please bear this in mind. This is very important. Cool. Now we can really drill down more to the due diligence. We already started a bit. So basically, there are 3 types. What's really important? Don't hide anything. I mean, look. Been there, done that. Every startup has its own shit. Nothing is perfect, therefore it's startup, right? But having an investor, it's kind of like a marriage. You have to be really transparent, you have to be really open, no skeletons in the closet, you have to be 100% honest. If not only you will severely detriment the relationship with your investor, but also you can actually make certain legal provisions from your investment documentation to work against you. So it's really important for you to be honest at the very beginning. And the more honest you are, actually, the more help from the investor you can receive. So actually, it's counterintuitive. Just do not try to protect yourself. Try to be really transparent. Start with the bad things, actually. It's very good once you do your pitch and everything, and you really sit about, okay, so what we are going to do, then start with the toughest stuff that is ahead of you and ask the investor whether the investor is able to advise, whether to help you or not. For instance, I've seen a couple of startups that knew that, okay, we have good product, the technology is great, but we suck at marketing. And since we are B2C startup, well, the marketing is kind of a large nut to crack. So they admitted this information in front of all the investors, and we're asking the investors, so look, dear investors, we have a lovely product, good team, we suck at marketing. Can you help us? And actually they did and provided hard time to the investors themselves to really thinking, okay, so I do have this network, or I have this partnership with this organization or that organization, or actually in our portfolio, there are other 4 B2C startups utilizing this solution. They can help you out. So make investors become your team members before they even invest. This is the ideal way and the only way how actually you can really be able to determine whether it's a good chemistry and good fit or not. And you will be able to determine the quality of the investors only, not when providing with the beautiful business cases, but with providing them with the problems and seeing and watching and observing them, how they will be able to approach your problems and help you out with those. Okay, so, and this is ultimately, this is this mythological smart money that basically if you would like to receive the smart money, I mean, everybody claims that is a smart money investor. As everybody lawyer says that is the best lawyer in the world, of course. But the only way how you can really see whether they are smart money investors is to actually enable them to crack your problem. And you can do that in the course of this business due diligence before the term sheet itself. So utilize your skeletons in the closet, put them to the broad daylight, and see what happens with the investors themselves. If they help you, there is a good chance it's a good fit. If not, then you know that you are on your own, and that's okay. I mean, I've seen many entrepreneurs and who were confident, who said, I don't need smart money. We can do it on our own. We just need money. And the less they care, the better. And so, again, completely okay position to state that. But there were some, especially first-time investors, but not necessarily. I mean, even more matured ones were aware of their flaws and weak sides. So basically, it really depends about your strategy. Whether you are seeking easy money that will basically do not really draw you down with the reportings and everything, or do you really seek a partner who will help you out? And this is a decision you should really know in advance, because based on this, you will be targeting a particular VCs or investors in this regard. Cool. So that's how you prepare. Now, the business diligence or business DD, we went through that. So basically, it's really important for you to know. This is really interesting that I came across many, I would say even later stage companies who actually raised angel round, even pre-seed rounds, and they have no idea about competitive landscape, like really no. And and they didn't even were aware of their USPs. And if you have a good investor who is asking about those, then you have a hard time. So it's really important for you to spend some time basically researching and actually ideally personally knowing your competitors to see their business cases, see what they are up against, and honestly and holistically assess whether there is a space for your business idea to grow or not really. And if not, then you can save yourself some time, of course. So actually the competitive landscape you are doing on your own sounds banal. However, I've seen too many startups not doing this homework and suffering the consequences afterwards. Then there's a financial DD. Just show everything you've got. Very often the early stage startups do not even have a company, so there is no statutory reporting, so you've got only management reporting, usually some costs, not really their revenues. So show those. However, if you are a company that operates 2-3 years on the market, then of course a statutory reporting would be necessary. But usually there is no really brainer there. What's really interesting, I would say, and what's tough is a legal due diligence. I mean, yeah, you can read the stuff that is being reviewed. As I've said, some of the DDs go through all of those and are very, very deep. Some of them are very super fast, and they say, okay, show me your license agreements and show me 2 contracts with your top clients to see whether they are okay or not. If you show this, the rest of the stuff would be basically included into the representations and warranties in the investment documentation, where you would state, yeah, everything we have. But for the DD itself, you might need only this crucial documentation. When discussing the IP, it's not just the copyright. So basically the ownership of the source code you have to your digital product or to the hardware or anything, but it's also a brand. So basically trademarks, so that you can claim domain names or social media web pages or anything. So trademarks are also very important for the seed investors. If you are a medtech or health tech startup, or agriculture, then or green tech, maybe even patents, or utility designs may be into play. But this is, I would say, very rare in digital industry, and mostly we are focused on the copyright and trademarks themselves. So make sure that you've got those. The lovely thing about copyright is that you don't need to register; just you have to have a good contract. For the trademarks, it takes 4 to 12 months to get those. However, once they've got registered to the very day of the filing. So basically, you got them also back to the couple of months. But still, it's important to at least have the application filed so that this is good. And usually, it's not really costly. So please think about trademarks as well, and especially, and this is a bit of the rabbit hole, but think about trademarks when thinking about your brand. Too many startups I've seen rebranding because of because there was no possibility to register a trademark. Okay, and if you are early stage company, then costs you nothing. However, if you're already business, you've got a brand, you've got brand awareness, then actually, and you got organic stuff, it can cost you quite a lot if you are forced either to the dispute with your competitor, or you are forced to rebrand. So think about trademarks, not only domain names, but also trademarks in advance, so that you can keep your brand from the very outset of your business to the very exit. Now, so what were the most, I would say, frequent issues we see in the legal due diligence? So first of all, it's a complicated corporate structure, meaning that there are many companies. Some of them are especially when it comes to crypto business, some of them are in Gibraltar, some of them are in Liechtenstein, some of them are elsewhere. And this is not a good business to really enter, because no investor wants to really enter 4 different companies in 4 different continents. That doesn't really make sense. So what you want to do is to create a holding that basically would be one company holding all the others, right? For instance, or there are different ways how to make your corporate structure tidy, but it's very important to have this structure actually ready to be invested. Very often what we see is that if the startups want to move to the US, despite being from the Central Eastern Europe, they already found a holding company in US, in Delaware, and basically raise funds on the Delaware entity while having the delivery hub here in the Europe. So that's also possible. However, please be ready, because these restructurings not only have tax implications, but also take time, take money. So it's not really easy, and it's good to be ready for the investor. On the other hand, very often startups are not really sure where to go, and actually their corporate structure might be determined by the investor itself. So if the investor comes from US, the fund would probably require you to move your holding to the Delaware, because it's a familiar jurisdiction. However, if you would be raising funds both in Europe, for instance, also in UK or in the US, then it may be favorable for you to really wait until you sign the term sheet and then agree with the investors where actually will establish your corporate entity. And actually, even this can be I would say, an upside for the investor to basically be part of the decision. So this is also something that you can take into the consideration. As I've said, the second most important and most often issue is that there is IP missing. I've already mentioned the example with the old developer developing some source code already gone from the company. You are not able to find him, or actually the developer is resisting to really sign the license contract because he or she they actually know that, okay, you are in the process of investment raising, so basically you should really pay them for a bit more or some premium. So this missing IP is a too often too big issue, and I would say, and if you think about it in advance, then it's super cheap and easy to avoid it. So please think about it. Messy cap table, that's my favorite. 2, 3, 4 friends start a company, Friday night project, garage, everything goes fine. Then, money comes in, and people, even in good intention and good faith, they do, honestly, I've seen it, they are very honest, all four, but they do remember things differently. And they do, because people's brain are like this. There was no shareholders agreement in place. There is no vesting. So if you fire some founder because the founder proves to be not of good quality, then actually the founder keeps 25% of your company, and you don't have any means to get them back because the vesting was not agreed in paper. So these cap tables, very often when the founders fight each other and cannot really clean it, are not investable. No VC would go into the cap table such as these, where you have that weight, where you have basically people not contributing to the value of the company. Okay, I've seen many disputes, many unsuccessful investments due to this. Please, once the money starts to come in, either from your clients or you are thinking about investment, please sign the simple shareholders agreement stating basic rights and obligations, incorporating vesting periods, so that you would have some drag-alongs, tag-alongs, whatever, so that you can at least have some legal means how to manage your cap table so that it's actually okay and ready for the future investments. Otherwise, you would lose the game before you even started. Okay, and I know that very often even families start the startups themselves, or very good friends, and it's weird to really go into legalities at the very beginning, but it's just a good practice and good, I would say, practice and policy to go through this awkwardness and set good and clear rules, because clear rules make good friends, as lawyer says.
The other question I have regarding vesting, does it reset every time you raise the round?
Very good question. Usually, yes, it does. However, it really depends. For instance, at the angel round, you can have like 4-year vesting, and then in the seed round, you can agree on the 3-year vesting, right? That's possible. Also, it's possible that at some particular round, some of the founders may leave the company, maybe buy it out or whatever, and therefore a new founders would join the team, and then of course they would need a new vesting. And of course, as the stage progresses, I would say in the Series A, Series B, even 2-year vestings are very often in place. So I would say the younger the company, the longer the vestings are, but then they are reset, but the duration can shorten.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And thank you very much for your questions. But however, there are 7 more people, and I know it's very difficult to ask the first question, so I'll create this space. And if you have any question crossing your mind and you are not really sure when to ask it, now is the time. So please feel free to ask that if you have any questions. or comment or personal story? Anything that would add? Jesse?
I was going to ask, when are you going to get or when is Europe going to get a document similar to the SAFE that the US has?
Sorry, in Europe, you mean our?
Right, yeah, like SAFE is not common in Europe. And where is the European version?
That's a very good question, Jesse. Well, the issue and the problem is Europe itself. The Europe itself consists of 20 whatever countries or European Union with very different laws, very different jurisdictions. So it's really difficult to create a pan-European document. However, there are national startup hubs. For instance, in Estonia, it's Startup Estonia, where actually you can access the template documentation. And there is a template term sheet, template shareholders agreement, and everything. In Slovakia, there is a Civita created, I'd say Fintech Slovakia, no, not Fintech Slovakia, Innovate Slovakia, which is the platform for startups where they also try to include a term sheet, for instance, that should be the role term sheet for the industry. So I would say they are national initiatives. Unfortunately, we are not that far away in accommodating them as they are in the Y Combinator's safes in the US. Hopefully, in the couple of years, we would also have one standard document per country. Also, I would say some of the documentation, such as shareholders agreement, would be based on one law, such as, I don't know, UK or whatever, maybe the documentation can be standardized across the Europe, but it is not now. Oh, good question, thanks. Anybody else? There is a room for one more. And if not, then we can continue. Cool. So messy cap table, missing contracts. Well, yes. Unforgettable key customers. Yes. Very often, even if you are B2C platform, usually you may utilize some intermediary that you have a contract with. Now, being dependent on one intermediary, it's tough. Therefore, it's very important to have a good conditions. Also, e-shops very often have this issue that basically they do have supplier contracts from 2-3 suppliers. If they are wrong, they put them to the bad position, even from the cash flow perspective, but also from a liabilities perspective, it really detriments and harms your stuff. So if you have some core documentation, core agreement that actually is binded to the most of the business of your company, just make it right. And be sure that you make every effort to be as powerful and as solid as possible. And last thing is, yes, investment in eligibility, which means that there are certain European funds that do distribute or allocate public money, and they need to adhere to certain conditions, either geographic conditions or the age of the company or particular location outside of the capital, for instance, or even particular industries. So actually, there are a couple of things to really observe, and sometimes, and we saw it quite often actually, was that the startups were simply not eligible for the investment, and this is something that you should try to find out before you actually decide to approach the EU funds. Otherwise, you would spend and burn a lot of your energy and time, and in the end of the day, the investment would not go through, or you would get funds, but then at some point you would need to return them. So please be careful with that. This applies mostly to Europe. In the US, there are no such structures, to the best of my knowledge. Cool. Term sheet. So we talked about the term sheet quite great deal, so I'll just be more quick here unless you have more questions. And I think this is a very good time for you to really ask your questions. You might have seen some term sheets yourself offered to your startup, so this is a good time to really discuss your questions you have. So basically, term sheet itself is basically not binding documentation. So you have no obligations to really adhere to anything you sign there besides NDA, so non-disclosure, and usually exclusivity of the VC you signed the term sheet with. However, it's very rare to be able to renegotiate the business terms agreed in the term sheet, okay? Therefore, the term sheets are signed that basically they should make the negotiation easier, faster, so they fixed the major things and then fine-tune the rest, okay? So it's very unethical, and usually the VCs would not be pushed, willing to be pushed themselves to really open the term sheet conditions. And therefore, if there is something you hope to negotiate afterwards, don't, and really push hard at the negotiation of the term sheet. Afterwards, there is only mostly legal fine-tuning, but most of the business terms are agreed in the term sheet. Okay, so be mindful of that. Who prepares it? Usually, it's a VC. However, we've seen a couple of examples where actually even startup can come up with the term sheet, or can be a collaborative process where at least the startup would push the VC, as Jesse was asking, to say, okay, I don't really care about your 15 pages term sheet, it's crap. Please, let's agree to use the template from the startup Estonia, and let's go according to this one. So this might be possible. Some of the VCs are open to that, and therefore, as I've said, be tough negotiators and try to save and secure the best conditions for your business idea. And the term sheet is the best place for you to do so for the years to come. Okay. Now, okay. So what's the content of the term sheet? What are the most, I would say, fundamental or critical parts? So first of all, I will not read all of those. If you have any questions related to anything or anything beyond, now is a good time to ask. But I will cover the bolded ones. So I'll start with the liquidation preference, which usually is stated as first there are two things. There is a multiple, 1, 2, 3, whatever. And then whether it's participating or non-participating liquidation preference. Now, the market standard is 1 or 1.5 and non-participating liquidation preference, meaning that if there would be a liquidity event in future, such as exit or whatever, the investor would choose either to get some money that is already calculated based on the multiple, or would actually opt for the pro rata, so the proportionate proceeds from the liquidity round. This is non-participating. Participating means that the investor would be able to, first of all, secure invested funds pursuant the particular multiple, and then on top of it, also be able and be part of proportionate distribution of the proceeds from the rest of the money, if any. Now, this not participating option or liquidity preference is really, really rare. It's not market standard. You should fight. When it comes to the multiple, it depends. If it's an early stage startup and, for instance, you play it tough and you get the high valuation, then very often the VC would say, okay, you've got high valuation, fair enough, but then the multiple would be 2x or 3x, okay? So it would be 2 times or 3 times the invested amount. So be aware that if you push hard on the valuation, this may happen, and actually the VCs can be more strict when it comes to liquidation preference, and even have a solid ground for pushing through the participating one. What's really important, and this was a very good question already, was the founders vesting and leaving. That yes, usually when there is an investment round, the vesting periods are always agreed from the outset. However, the duration can change, but that's very, very important for the founders. Previously, I've seen a couple of weeks ago interesting term sheet where actually the founders said that okay, we would have a term sheet and we would have all these vestings in place and everything, but we would like to have an option to have a small exit round in 2 years. I would say to sell 10% of our stake. It's not a good sign for the VC, but the VC accepted because simply the founders were able to describe why actually it was important for them to really increase and be able and have option to really make their personal financial situation better. So even this very tough, I would say, call, very tough negotiation call with the VC went through, but the founders were open at the very outset and it paid off. So this is very interesting. Also, what you should have there and what should be the object of discussion is the founders leaving. Now, you don't want the founder to leave from tomorrow, right? You want to have some knowledge transfer and everything. So you should really be very precise when describing the process of how the founder should leave the meeting. In the very beginning, when the teams are small, each and every founder counts, usually with very different skill set, right? So if the head of sales leaves you, who is part of your founding team, then you've got no sales and you're B2B market, it's tough, right? So you want the head of sales to at least have 6 months of handover period and be able to find a suitable substitute for that. And if not, then he is a bad leaver or she is a bad leaver, and such founder would be personally liable, for instance, to really return some money or pay penalty or whatever, or lose shares or even vested shares or whatever. So this is very important to cover, so that also your team are more coherent, I would say. I would say that I've seen couple of documents where the founders' leaving rules were well drafted, and actually they increased the stability of the team itself. Because since the founders were aware that, okay, if I leave, that's actually not so easy, it's actually quite tough, they were willing to go through even the tough times of the startup. And there will be tough times of your startup, and you want your startup to be to have a stability, because usually your founding team should be consisting of good founders, experts. Now, if they have an easy way out, if they can found another startup, or if there is a good position for them in Silicon Valley or elsewhere, well, when it's a rainy season, they may go away. However, if they commit to the founder leaving clause, it can serve to the benefit of your own idea. So this is something you should really think about. Okay, voting rights, and this goes also to the supervisory body. It's a market standard that before the Series A, the founding team should have a majority of voting rights. Okay, you want founders to really steer the company. In the US, even after a Series A, they should have the majority. In EU, it depends, but around this Series A round, you should still be around 50% of voting rights. However, also, as I've said, VCs or investors need to also protect their investments, right? It's a risky business. Therefore, they need certain level of protection. What we do in the CEE is that we don't have a boards, we have supervisory body, where actually certain restricted or reserved matters need to be approved by the supervisory body, okay? And usually in the supervisory body, either the investor has a majority or has a veto power, okay, which is completely fine. The discussion should be around the scope of the reserved matters, okay? So that you would not need to go with every single agreement to the supervisory body to ask for permission, but there would be a reasonable threshold defined, for instance, okay? And usually this is the toughest stuff because there are like 20 items that are usually included into the reserved matters. So this is something you should really pay close attention to. In the US, it's different. There is a board of directors where usually there are 3 seats. After seat, the seed investor should have 1, founders 2. At the Series A, either you have 5 seats and investors have 2 seats, or actually you lose the majority. That's possible. So it's 1 to 2. But anyway, there is a bit different structure of this board, corporate structure of this board management. But this is something you should really think about. Because the last thing you want is to have a early stage company that basically you lose really power over. So this is something you should really think about, and especially for the years to come, because you would like to keep, when you are freshly founded startup, you want to at least 2-3 years to really keep the control of your company until you really build up a meaningful relationship with your investors. Drag along, tag along. Those are tag along is a minority protection right. So basically, that's really important. With the drag along, it means that certain amount of shareholders can basically force the other shareholders and drag them to sell everything they have. This is very important, especially if you are willing to exit your company at some point. However, what's really important there to think about the thresholds. Okay, so what threshold of shareholders, what voting power is capable of actually enabling such drag along, whether 50% or 70% or 80% or whatever, right? So think about it in the landscape of your business. Cool. For convertible notes, it's pretty much the same very often, but also there are a couple of other issues. There is maturity ranging between 12 to 24 months. Usually, you don't want a convertible for 24. Well, the convertible is okay pretty much, but still, usually the maturity is around 18 months, and then valuation cap and a discount. Because since the investors, they are giving you money, but they will be converted to your equity in a year and a half or two, they undergo certain risks, and therefore they should be discounted for that. However, the discount ideally should be significantly smaller than your best case scenario in your business case, so that it's more beneficial for you. Cool. I think we covered almost everything when it comes to the term sheets. These are some numbers. I would say that you can go through. You will of course have the presentation to your disposal, so you can read it on your own. These are, I would say, the standard terms in the CE region mostly. Cool. Any questions in this regard? Otherwise, we would go to the investors landscape. Jesse is happy. Thank you. Kasia, Claudia, Adam, any questions? Not really. Okay. Anyway, if any question pops up, let me know. From the room, gentlemen and gentlewomen? Not now. Cool. So investors landscape is the very last part of this presentation, and we have like 30 minutes left, so we are good on time. Cool. Oh yeah, smart money. So this is this mythical creature of the startup ecosystem, the smart money, that we will discuss right now. So first of all, there are a couple of distinctions you should make among the VCs. Well, first of all, it's a private versus public funds. There are, I would say, three types of funds. Firstly, there are funds that were created by the European Union somehow that can invest only either in the particular country or in the particular region to the particular businesses under particular terms, right? Their conditions stretch from 200 to 100K to, I would say, 1 million, more give or take, depending on the structure of the fund. You have to be eligible for the investment, fulfilling the geography, fulfilling the age of the company, and some other issues. These public funds are very young usually, and however, I would say that honestly they're in position where they do lack number of targets, and they do really struggle for each and every good startup. So I would say founders, it's a founders market. You are in a very good position to raise funds. You are in a very good position to receive many term sheets to choose from. And you can really push your way through. Since the European Union pours a lot of money into the innovation industry, currently the venture capital is abundant, and therefore you have a very good position to really negotiate. Not only with public funds, but also with the private ones, because they compete in the same market. And I mean, 5 years ago the situation was very different. Today the situation is really pro-founder situation. When it comes to the private funds, I would say there are two options. Either it's a standard VC that has certain LPs, and basically I would say basically launches a couple of funds over the course of the years, and they have, I would say, more robust structure. I don't know, such as Speed Invest. or in Austria, or you have some family offices. I would say small family VCs, where actually one or two people really decide the tide of the things. Usually there is more flexibility there because the private funds have no restrictions. However, while the established, such as Speed Invest, they do have certain investment thesis and are, I would say, willing to really follow it more rigidly. I would say the family funds are really flexible when it comes to the particulars of your startup or of your situation. So there is much more room for the negotiation, I would say, that with the others. So this is first thing you should really think about when choosing which funds do you want to target, whether all of them or just EU funds or just private funds. Really depends. Then most of the funds in the region, unfortunately, are really general funds. So basically, very few of them are, I would say, focused on a particular industry or particular way of doing business. So there is no like B2C or B2B fund. There are certain venture builders, for instance, Vacuum Labs or Mitten in Czech Republic, that have, for instance, very good e-shops or B2C facing industry. I think Mitten announced 2 days ago or 3 days ago that they would like to spend 30 million euros over the course of a couple of years to the crypto or blockchain industry and blockchain startups. So actually they have very little experience so far, but this may grow in the years to come. So I would say that there are certain hubs that are focused and there are certain individuals that are focused, but in general, most of the VCs are very general, and therefore you should really drill down to their portfolios to see what are the companies that actually really matter to you and whether they can help you out or not. What's really there is wrong numbering, whatever. What's really important is that you should be really focused on the modus operandi of the particular fund, meaning that some of the funds just invest the money and leave you on your own, and it's easy money. And if you don't need any pressure and you are confident, then that's maybe the best shot you have. But some of the VCs are like, okay, so if you want to help us out, we will help you. So you can reach out. And some of the funds are really structured. Okay, so they have whole teams who will basically work on your business strategy, help you with marketing, have already in-house teams managing the performance, for instance, marketing like PPC or whatever campaigns. So it really depends what you are searching for, whether you are searching handholding or you are in search for autonomy and basically just the free cash. Okay, so this is a decision you should make in advance. Otherwise, your expectations might be disaligned with the investor coming on board. There is a question.
Sorry. One question about these types of smart money investors. If we try to locate the best investor for us, who give us the support and the knowledge, how should we come by doing that? Because every website is basically the same. Everybody has the smart money and stuff like that. One type of thing how we thought about this was speaking with the startups they already funded. But are there any other options to basically look at the landscape of the investors? Thank you.
It's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, you nailed the answer already. I mean, the best and the most safe bet for you is to talk to the CEOs of the portfolio companies. I mean, they are not in conflict of interest to you, and they would be able to share really their views. I've been part of the couple of startups who were doing this due diligence on their VCs, and they found interesting things. And actually, really, the investor that was sexy and the website was amazing and the portfolio was stunning, actually, they found out that they do not really care about their portfolio at all, and therefore they choose not to accept their term sheet, for instance. So definitely the portfolio companies and their CEOs will be very... I haven't seen dishonest CEO, honestly, when talking and referring to the particular VC. Also, you can ask around to not to the other VCs because they are in the conflict of interest, but to the other ecosystem players. So I would say they are such as Future Now. I would say is the ideal platform to ask these people around what are your experiences. In Sparring, we have experience with a couple of investors as well. There are I would say ecosystem players such as Civita, Startup Den, etc., and more Coworks, also Hub, Campus, Spot. So basically, there are many people who actually know each other. The innovation ecosystem in the CE is not really large, so basically people know a lot of use cases and can advise you very fairly, I would say. So if you take your time and really reach out to a couple of people, I'm sure you will get a valuable insights. If not, I mean, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Welcome. Cool. Lovely. Okay, so we went through this. Now we can maybe compare EU, the US. Very often we are being asked whether the startups should aim for the US or UK, or they should raise the funds here. Well, and very often we hear that the tickets raised in the US are larger than the ones in the EU, which is true. Okay, so how to approach this? Well, first of all, it really depends. Okay, most of the startups are not raising one round. Usually, startups raise among 3 to 5 rounds. So it's really important for you, successful ones. So it's really important for you to know that maybe because you have only limited energy and time of your founders and limited time to get the money. To get money from the US, if you are fully based in the CE, it's difficult. It's tough, okay? If you have boots on the ground in the Silicon Valley, situation is different. But if you are based here, raise US fund, it's tough. If you have not like some easy way in, there are some ways, but not really easy. Therefore, it might be beneficial for you to really start with the local round and then take it from there. If your market is mostly located in the EU, it doesn't really make sense for you to go to the US. Of course, if your market is in the US or is global, digital, some development tool or whatever, then of course you should go there. However, yes, US market when it comes to venture capital is significantly larger. The competition among VCs is larger. The tickets are higher, but if you would like to really be present in the US, you have to pay for the team there and the cost there. Now, the complexity itself, when it comes to the taxation, administration, legal, accounting, is costly. Also, if you want to set up your team globally and have a delivery hub in the US, the costs for 4 developers for a year would cost you $1 million. Okay, 4 developers in the CE for a year would cost you what? Maybe $200K. If they are like amazing, okay? So, and you give them some equity. So, yes, the tickets may be 100% higher in the US or even 200% higher in the US, but actually the costs can be significantly lower here. So actually, it really depends on what you are aiming for, what you want to achieve in the 2-3 years time, and you should optimize for that. Either optimize for the cost, or you optimize for the abundance of the capital. For instance, there was one startup that was basically fully founded in the US, but of course then there are basically no ties to the Central Eastern Europe, and also the founding team actually lost control after 1 year over the startup, because basically the local team in the US took over with the help of investors, because there is no way for you to really control it. So be mindful of that. Be mindful that stretching it too far and too thin might be risky for your culture, for their costs, and also for the future. So I would say that the most standard way is to raise seed here in the region, and then take it from there. There are great funds, I would say, that can help you with the seed fund, a seed round. And then there are a couple of those, such as, I don't know, Credo or Speed Invest, that can help you out with a Series A or something. If, of course, you have good numbers and good potential. And of course, this is very subjective. Of course, they do not have a patented truth. So if they will basically not be willing to work with you, I mean, no hard feelings, and you should search elsewhere. I mean, usually out of 50 reach outs, usually 2, maybe 3 term sheets can be achieved, and mostly it's because it depends really on the warmth of your intro. If the warmer the intro is, the higher the probability. Sometimes it's like 50% with the great intros. Sometimes it's way below 5. Okay, so be patient there. Despite it's a founders market, it's still tough business. Okay, and yeah, basically I would say that as agreed, the last 15 minutes would be open for your Q&As. The most of the stuff that I was talking about is basically part of the Sparring playbook, which is a free of charge open source where you can find some documentation, legal templates for transfer of IP, NDAs, etc., and also a lot of guidelines in relation to the investments, employment, ESOPs, and other stuff that is useful for the startups. So feel free to study this. It may help you out, and you can basically help yourself to look at. So it's open to you, and of course, Future Now and Hubbub is a part of it. Cool, and thank you very much for your attending, and please, I would like to open the Q&A session with Adam.
Majo, thank you very much for inspiring workshop. I would like to encourage you to ask questions or maybe share your experience with these negotiations or investment challenges you are facing. I can see that you have the mic in your hand, so please start.
Yeah, I want to ask maybe on your opinion. I read there's comparing the US and the EU investors. Being a software platform startup, what do you think? It's better to look for investor there is like straight up business guys, or there is some investor which has some also startup exiters or some operators that were actually part of the startup scene and they exited, they have some investment and they're moving forward with investing in other startups, or just the business guys? Whether there is some difference in the approach of these types of investors?
Mm-hmm. Definitely there is a difference, and I mean, first of all, I would say that it really depends what you're looking for. Okay, if you are looking for money, it might be much easier to get money from the business guys because they are very pragmatic. Okay, if you get investors from your field, for instance, they can be more engaged into your product. They can be more willing to really help you out. I don't want to say micromanage, but they would like to really be part of the process, part of the story, part of the journey, because they do not have that many shots, and they really would like to make their picks rightly, and they want to devote their energy to it, and you should be ready for it. Because if you are not, then a tension would be created there, okay? On the other hand, I would say that if you feel that such help would be, you would need it, because you see that, okay, we have a good product, but still, there might be some issues to be and some holes and places left blank and that need to be filled, and you feel that you need the support, then actually expanding the, I would say, expertise of your founding team might be a good thing to do. So it really depends about your status and how confident you are and what are the drawbacks of your team, and there always are some weak sides. And it depends whether the VC is capable of filling those and replacing those or not really. If not, then go for the business guys. It's easy.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have some questions on the Zoom? Anybody? I can see everybody like thinking really hard about the investment challenges. Until you will have any questions. Okay, Jesse.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. Thank you so much. I guess I wonder, I've seen a couple of funds, like VC funds recently that are very much like green this or, really kind of eco-focused funds in particular, but I know there's many funds that do have a focus. And if we want to apply to a couple of those, do you think we really, like, are they still looking for financials first, and with something that has to do with that ecosystem, like green tech or something, or should we really rebuild our pitch deck specifically for talking about how to address whatever issue that fund is focused on?
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So let me repeat your question. I mean, are you asking whether you should tailor your pitch deck to the particular VC, or?
Yeah. I guess, I mean, generally that is what I'm asking. But in particular, like if there's a climate-focused fund, do you have a feel for like how much we should really just be in, like, you know, the people who put money, who back that fund? I mean, is it really like a marketing ploy? Are they just looking to be in green tech companies and the financials don't matter that much? Or is it really still like a financials first and it should have some aspect of green tech, or it really depends on the fund? I see.
That's a very good question. Thank you. It really depends. Some of the funds, especially the ones that are very structured, they do have a fiduciary duties to their LPs, limited partners, and so they need to really deliver the financial outcomes. And there is certain investment thesis that maybe yes, maybe no, but this is significantly secondary. However, and this maybe boils down to your question, there are certain, I would say, high net worth individuals, angels, or small family offices that may be more committed due to their life story to the particular issue, particular topic, and they really are they are very eager to really push this regardless of the numbers. A couple of weeks ago, there was a legal tech startup actually founded by Sparring that went through the external investment round, and there was I would say, general VC entering. However, alongside the general VC, additional angels entered the round, and those angels, they didn't really care about the money nor the proceeds of the investment or anything, or the liquidation preference. They were super happy about the mission. They were super happy about the impact the startup can have on the general society, and therefore they said, yes, this is our startup. We want to devote our personal time to its success, and therefore we are giving you this money to make this happen. So it's really, really individual, and yeah, the larger the fund, the more pragmatic it is, I would say, as a rule of thumb.
Okay, we have another question.
One question here about valuation. In the early stages of the startup, what's the calculation behind the valuation? Because we are at the early stage, we have some paying customers, but how we can approach to think about the valuation on our side?
That's a very good question, and you are lucky you have some paying customers. There are startups with no revenues at all. That's a good one. There are 3 or 4 methods used. Usually, if there no in later stages, the default is you are basically calculating monthly revenues, monthly recurring revenues. You extrapolate, and you see the growth from the past, and basically this is the valuation. And the discussion is about the multiple, whether it's profit-based or revenue-based, and it's 4x or 11x, whatever. When it comes to the startups not having a revenue or having marginal revenue, then the valuation should end anywhere between usually $500,000 and $2 million. And the ticket size depends on the robustness of the product, whether, for instance, 2 years of research and development of a particular product were in place, or it's just the idea in a spreadsheet or Google Sheet, whether for instance, how scalable it is, what's the team, whether it's raising funds in the US or in the EU. So it really depends. But I would say without revenues or very, very early stage startups, the valuation is, I would say, between $500,000 and $1 million, depending on the, as I said, three methods you can research. Maybe one thing and one way how to go around this is to basically get an angel round, usually 50K to 100K, very, very small silver bullet. Basically make yourself to be able to really scale and push and launch the MVP to the market, get solid data, and then your evaluation can be determined in a more, I would say, structured way. Otherwise, it's just a guess, convincing arguments of the founders and the negotiation, and it's pure guessing. There is nothing. One last thing maybe is that you can look to the market. That basically, if you see the similar companies and you see the average tickets, then you can say, look, this is the price, take it or leave it. So these are the usual techniques, I would say. Welcome.
Marián, I have a question. When do you think is the right time to call a lawyer for help in these negotiations and in the investment process, since we are discussing early stage startups?
That's a good one. I think once the term sheet is signed, I mean, ideally, of course, lawyers should be along the way. But I think the term sheet, if you have a good advisor, or at least the founders is aware of the market standards and is capable of are able to negotiate themselves, lawyers should come in after the term sheet, so that the data room is being prepared, and then, of course, the investment documentation is being drafted or at least reviewed. If you, as a founder, you are aware of the fact that your data room is not good and that it would take us some time to really fulfill it with reasonable documents, then it's important to really contact the lawyers before the term sheet so that the documents are being produced, signed, so that they are ready for the due diligence to start after the term sheet.
And what is a typical budget to order a service like this, if you need that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think some numbers were already in the presentation. So I think the usual investment round costs somewhere between 6 to 15K, depending on the corporate structure, jurisdiction, and everything. This is for the transaction documentation and the negotiation and everything. The preparation of the data room, it depends, of course. But with the early stage companies, it should not be very high. It should be in, I would say, low thousands of euros. Basically, what you need to do, if the documentation is missing, you need to create 1 or 2 templates with your customers and with your team, sign those, and it should be pretty much okay if everything goes smooth and no dispute or conflict would arise. So this should be ideally very, very cheap and smooth. Sometimes it's not.
Feel free to ask any additional questions if you want. We have another one.
Just one small, because you're mentioning that, I think Jesse asked, when there is some bigger investment and then there were some smaller angel investment coming in, is it like something that the investors are also actively looking for startups? Because you said they are each receiving hundreds of thousands of pitches. Is it also the other way around? And if so, is there something that should help us somehow be more visible, or how to attract the investor without contacting him?
Yeah. Well, I think by the very nature of you being in this future now is the ideal way how to make yourself visible. I think most of the acceleration schemes and acceleration programs, bootcamps, are connected to both the startups, and they bring together startups and investors. So it's an ideal place. The best advice I can give you, make a hell of a good pitch. And if you pitch well, I'm sure that in the after party, would be any today, this year? Good? After party. So in the after party, stay sober, and I'm sure the investors would be willing to approach you. But of course, there are some, I think you as investors might not be present. So therefore, this is more difficult, of course. But if you are searching for the regional funds, then I think this is the best way. For instance, there is another acceleration program called Startup Wise Guys in the Baltics, but they also cover basically the whole Europe, from Italy to whole CE region. They invested themselves. They also co-invest with the other VCs, even slower ones. A couple of slower companies received investment from the Wise Guys program. So there are a couple of ways how to attract good talent and I would say attention of investors. On the other hand, some of the acceleration programs require equity. You should fight for it. And also, it takes a lot of time. Okay, so since the acceleration programs want to be contributive to you, they are time consuming, and you as a founder already fundraising don't have much time for that. So you should really undergo one or two, not more, because I've seen a couple of startups undergoing eternally, infinitely many acceleration programs, and at some point it suffocates the startups. The startup must move forward, and already I've seen jokes between the VCs that, okay, I've seen this 3 years ago, it was pretty much the same, it's a shitty startup. Okay, so at least if you stay around long, at least move your game up, expand, move, because if you pitch the same idea 3 years all around, then it's not really a good material to invest to.
On Thursday, you will have the opportunity during office hours to make a good impression on the leaders of the VCs from the V4 region. So good luck with that. Since we are getting closer to the end of today's session, I have one last question to you, since you are also on the side of the startup ecosystem, because you are co-founder of various legal tech products and companies. Tell us more about what these are doing, or what is your mission with these startups you have.
Oh, thank you. We want to bring blind justice to those who need it. So basically, I would say the oldest legal tech startup we have is a Trauma, which provides a global brand protection. Basically, in a few clicks, you can not only register your trademark globally and for a very competitive price, but also you can basically protect your own brand. For free of charge, you can actually check whether your brand is trademarkable or not. So that's great. You should use it. But then, of course, even if you choose to register the trademark, we can help you with the strategy and then protection, trademark watch, and everything. I would say the one closest to my heart is Verdicto, which is basically Airbnb for lawyers. But before there is a marketplace, there is an online consulting forum where basically for €4 or €5, you can receive basically instant, within a couple of hours, advice from attorney to your issue. And basically the Verdicto is not a holistic platform. So Verdicto really tries to basically make sure that the attorneys responding are specialists and are good. So it starts to work as Airbnb. They're in early stage, but I believe that if this would become a go-to partner to the legal support for the SMEs and consumers in the region, I believe this can be a significant game changer that will bring justice really much closer to the people who are in the greatest need. Because if you are powerful and wealthy, you can pay your justice. But if you are not, then tough luck for now. And hopefully with Verdicto, the times will change.
So the Verdicto could be a go-to place for the early stage startups if they need help.
One day.
Okay,
hopefully.
Perfect. Great, amazing. So keep up the good work. We wish you all the best with the startups and all the good work you are doing with Sparring. Thank you very much for your inspiring presentation and a lot of valuable insights. And round of applause for Marián Porvažník from Sparring.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the digital participants. And feel free to reach out if any questions pops up, even after the presentation. And of course, the presentation itself would be basically eligible to you. So no worries.
Perfect.
Have a nice day.
And thank you all for your attention today. We are continuing tomorrow with the topic which is dedicated to the main question, why should you talk with your customers before you make the first sale. It will be with a colleague of mine, a co-founder of innovation studio Cube, Slavo Tuleja. We will be discussing your value proposition, and it will be really interactive. So we are looking forward to discuss your insights and your experience. If you have any questions, feel free to use the platform futurenow2021.org, and we will be very happy if you will leave us the feedback for today's session. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye.